How many people do you need to kill before you violated a ceasefire? 1, surely. But what about 2, 10, 100? Or how about more than 1,250? That's how many Palestinians Israel has killed in Gaza since agreeing to an ostensible ceasefire with Hamas in October. Israel has also continued to pummel southern Lebanon despite a ceasefire there, but the Western media appears to see no violations at all. Instead, it sees ceasefires that are fragile, tested, strained, or shaky. Given that news reporting is supposed to rely on precision and accuracy, you'd imagine organizations such as the BBC, Reuters, the Associated Press, and CNN have read the terms of the deal that was signed between Israel and Hamas in Egypt. It's unequivocal, and there really isn't much room for interpretation. There were conditions that needed to be fulfilled within the first 72 hours before the truce could take effect, including the withdrawal of Israeli forces to agreed lines within Gaza and the return by Hamas of all remaining Israeli hostages, living or dead. Once the prerequisites were met, which they were, the text said that, quote, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment and targeting operations, will be suspended. It's worth pausing on those words. All military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment and targeting operations, will be suspended. Now square that with more than 1,200 dead Palestinians. Square it with the fact that many were women and children. Square it with the Israeli attack on southern Lebanon that killed school principal Esperanza Gandour, her mother, a domestic worker, and a Syrian laborer as they traveled together in a car. Square it with the 8 people killed at a Palestinian funeral last month. And dare try to square it with the Israeli attack on Gaza that killed Firas al-Masri, his wife Salsabil, and their 3 daughters and son. They were snuffed out by an occupying force as they slept in their family home, a place that is supposed to be one of love, safety, and security. I could not find a single report in the Western media that described the massacre of the Masri household as a ceasefire violation. That's a pattern across similar atrocities. Israel said it was targeting a Hamas member without, as usual, providing evidence. But let's assume for illustrative purposes that Firas al-Masri was in Hamas. After all, since the bogus October agreement, whenever Israel claims it has killed a Hamas member, the Western media seems fine with it. But who did Israel agree the ceasefire with? Yes, Hamas. None of these firmly established truths seem to stop international journalists from abandoning their duty to call things what they are. A Reuters report on the targeted killing of the Masri family captured some of the horror and quoted Masri's father as he mourned the loss of his son, his daughter-in-law, his grandson, and 3 granddaughters. But despite that, the news agency managed to write 500 words, which also catalogued 5 other Israeli attacks on Gaza in the preceding days, without coming even close to saying that Israel had violated the ceasefire. Instead, Reuters treated the truce as an existing reality, not a fiction that is ignored on a daily basis, using this remarkable sentence construction. Quote, the latest deaths add to a toll of more than 1,160 Palestinians, mostly civilians, killed by Israeli attacks since an October ceasefire between Israel and Hamas militants took effect. Since the ceasefire took effect. It says a lot about the difference in how the international media reports on Israel and how it reports on almost every other country, that a storied news agency, known for the deliberation with which it chooses every word, could come up with that. Meanwhile, the BBC's report on the attack on Lebanon that killed Gandour and 3 others was astonishing for its naked double standard. In the headline, like Reuters, the BBC opted for since. Head teacher among 4 killed in deadliest Israeli attack on Lebanon since latest ceasefire. The elusive violating, though, did appear in the story itself. Israel continues to carry out sporadic strikes, accusing Iran-backed Hezbollah of violating the deal. The BBC published a piece about Israel's killing of 4 innocent people, after which the Israeli army absurdly said it bombed the car because it posed a threat to its soldiers. And yet the only violations BBC mentioned were unproven Israeli accusations against others. Journalism like this goes against everything that was drilled into me as a young news reporter for a Western organization. That's a key point. The journalists who work for these outlets would tell you that they are being fair and balanced. They would probably say that news organizations that call what is happening in Gaza a genocide, such as Middle East Eye, Al Jazeera and Zeteo, are partial, or that they are activists, not media professionals. But the opposite is true. Those newsrooms have stepped into a space abandoned by the mainstream when it comes to Israel, the space where events are reported accurately and with rigor. Though the killings are the most obvious breaches of the ceasefire agreements, there are others. The Gaza deal said in black and white that the Israeli army, quote, will not return to areas it has withdrawn from. It also noted that Israel had agreed to immediate commencement of full entry of humanitarian aid and relief. Not only did the Israeli army return to areas it had withdrawn from, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly ordered the expansion of the Gaza occupation to 70% of the territory, trapping most Palestinians along a small strip of coastline. And according to the United Nations, Israel has not permitted the agreed amount of aid to enter Gaza, where the UN recently warned the risk of famine was growing again. Has the Western media reported those verified facts as violations? Of course not. Israel this week rejected US President Donald Trump's 15-point plan for Phase 2 of the supposed ceasefire, which would involve Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza and the disarmament of Hamas. The Israeli army, Netanyahu said, will continue to thwart threats against our forces and our citizens. There you have it, a promise to continue breaching the ceasefire. Even if Phase 2 of this so-called ceasefire does eventually move forward, an Israel that sees no consequence for killing Palestinian men, women and children will probably violate its terms again, and the Western media will refuse to see it.